Namaste. Welcome to Sipping on Stories podcast, where we welcome women from all around the world who are healers or spiritual leaders to come and share their journey and their experiences. With that, we discover and explore different healing modalities. Of course, over warm cups and deep thoughts. Now, today's guest is Louise Johnson. So she is a burnout prevention and recovery coach. Louise has been a part of large corporate organizations for the last 18 years, where one day she experienced a severe burnout episode that really catalyzed in her becoming a life coach and helping a number of professionals dealing with burnout. Today, she is going to talk to us about what burnout actually looks like and what are some of the practical ways one can adapt to prevent burnout at workplace. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. But before that, you know the drill. You like, subscribe, and share so we can spread some love. Thank you. Louise, welcome to Sipping on Stories. It's really, really great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. So a little bit about me. My name is Louise. I now have a coaching practice called Life Coaching. And the reason I started this practice is because I'm a burnout survivor, first and foremost. And I've struggled through burnout more than once. The last time was particularly challenging for me. I'm not sure if you're aware, there are different stages of burnout, and I got to end stage burnout, which is basically emotional collapse. So there's mental, physical, and emotional collapse. It doesn't sound great when I stand here and tell you that that's exactly what happened, but you know, it's worth putting myself out there, because if I can prevent this for somebody else, I'd much rather say that this is what's happened to me. It was one of the darkest times in my life. It happened over a number of years. So, you become used to things. So you kind of, take more on board. You don't realize how much stress you're under, and you kind of make allowances for certain things. So I didn't actually resonate with the term burnout. I didn't realize I was in burnout. And that, I feel, is why I progressed so far along. I was so focused on achievement and being a hard worker and, being all things to all people, but not in I didn't feel like it was a bad thing. I just felt like this was part of what adulting was like, and you needed to work hard. That's the kind of culture and background I came from. So those are my strategies, and that's what I did. But I didn't know my limits, and when I came across my limits, I was like, no, I can push a bit harder and a bit further. And each time I was doing that, I was depleting my resources more and more. So I became quite different in terms of how I was reacting to situations, the person I was at home, the person I was in work. I take a lot of pride and joy in working, and I just noticed that I was sliding. Like, I was still able to perform the job, but I didn't feel like I was performing it as well as I wanted to. Like, if I look back, like I was comparing myself with myself, and I'd look back and say, I'm not doing as well as I did, like when I first started. And I was just always so tired. Like, I was just tired. And I remember saying that to just about everyone. They'd be like, how are you? And I'd be like, I'm tired. I can't wait for a holiday. But you know what? The holidays didn't fix it. Like, I was, I get to the holiday and then I become sick because the stress response catches up on you. I had some fantastic holidays as well. But, when you come back to work or you come back to the same stresses, that problem is still there, and it exacerbates it a little quicker. So I felt like I was just on a never-ending spiral downwards. And as time progressed, I ended up getting chronic fatigue, which is next level fatigue. Like, you can say, I'm so tired, and you can be bone weary tired. It's almost like your soul is tired, because you start questioning, what's the point of this? Is there any way out? I want my life back. Like, it's a really dark place to be. And at the same time, you're so tired. You don't have any energy to kind of fix it. And you don't know where to start. Because with burnout, it actually takes your prefrontal cortex offline. So that's your executive decision making. So you become very foggy minded, and things can become quite confusing for you. Like the routine things that you would do in your work. Like, so I would do routine calculations and they would take me so much longer to do. And then I would doubt that I'd done them correctly. So then I'd need to go and find somebody to check them for me. Which in itself, like, it didn't feel great because then I was like undermining myself for what I had actually done. Yeah, it was so dark, and it took a lot in terms of overhauling my life. It was basically like a complete lifestyle change in order to get my health back. So it's become my mission to speak a lot more about burnout so that people know what burnout is. It's not a weakness. It actually is just you don't know your survival strategies and you don't know your limitations. So once you can have awareness about those, you can start to get to the underlying issues. Like, there is nothing inherently wrong with you. It's just the way that you're going about some things. It needs an update. So my whole point is I want to prevent the pain and suffering of others because it is largely preventable. Yeah, this I feel is my calling now.
Yeah. It's so interesting is what you said is because coincidentally, there's no coincidence really, but last night I started talking to a friend of mine and she mentioned to me how it's just getting so monotonous working 9 to 5. And she said, oh, I wish that we would have 6 months of work and 3 months of break, how school used to be. She's like, adulting is it's really stressful. And this got me wondering, and I'm like, we are kind of so into work and, it's not 9 to 5 anymore. It's, 9 to 9, I think. In some cases, especially when you start working from home, you kind of, put more hours into it. And it's kind of, it's just kind of a vicious cycle, really. And people are like, oh, I'm still looking forward to this vacation. And they come back from the vacation, they get into the workspace and they are like fatigued again. And it's all going round and round and round in circles. And like, oh God, yes, I totally understand what you mean. So, just kind of brings me into asking this question is that what are some of the strategies do you think which are implementable so people can actively do them, or some kind of techniques that you would advise professionals of, in preventing these burnouts? What would you recommend?
First and foremost, I would recommend becoming aware of what burnout is, because there is a lot of misconception about what burnout is. We use the term almost like as a bit of banter. I'm quite burnt out, or I'm this burnt out, or like it's just becoming a bit of jargon now. Whereas actual burnout, it's only recently being conceptualized as a syndrome by the World Health Organization in 2019. So if you think about it in the big scheme of things, that's actually really recent that they've kind of gone, oh, okay, this is something we need to pay attention to. So we need to know what burnout is. And World Health Organization characterizes it as chronic workplace stress that has been mismanaged. So I agree with this to a point, because with my clients, I see, yes, there's a lot of stress in the workplace, but there can be a lot of stress outside as well. But because we spend most of our time working, it manifests in the workplace. So I agree up to a point. So I agree that it is chronic stress that has been mismanaged. Then we need to have a look at what it is exactly. So World Health Organization gives 3 kind of pillars as to defining it. So it's energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job. So you can start to feel quite negative towards your job, cynical towards your job and your colleagues around you. And then you have reduced professional efficacy. So that means you don't feel like you're doing enough. You're not doing enough of your job. So burnout is interesting because, as I say, there's 12 stages to burnout. So there's different symptoms along the way, and your mind and body are doing different things along the way. So how you speak to yourself, how you behave and present at the beginning of burnout is quite different to how you do it at the end. So I suppose becoming quite aware of what the signs and symptoms are up front, so that you can go, okay, I'm actually progressing now. Maybe this is something that I should consider. Because, once we start to slide down the slope, I've done some research, and across the 12 stages, there are certain stages that somebody might be receptive to intervention. So, your friend might come and say to you, oh, I've noticed you're not behaving like yourself. You seem quite stressed out. You're looking really tired. Can I help you? And you'll be like, no, I'm fine. So there are certain periods in that 12 stages where you actually can't see the problem, and you're unable to receive help. So in the beginning, I call it the green zone. You are able to kind of receive assistance, and you can see that there might be a problem. Then you go through a red zone, and then you come out again into a green zone, but it's quite far along the spectrum. So it's basically like when you're on your knees and you have no other choice but to notice that things are not like they were before. So if we bring awareness to the definition and some of the early symptoms, so the early stage, like you can think about it, when you start a new job and you're like, yeah, I'm going to be the best at, this, and I'm going to make an impact. And you just you have this unbridled optimism, and you're enthusiastic, and someone asks you to take on something and you're like, yeah, that's fine. I can do it. So that's cool. But then it kind of shifts into the next phase, which is like the early onset of stress. So you can become a bit more anxious. You notice some physical signs and symptoms. So you can have digestive issues. You're sleeping. You might not be able to fall asleep or stay asleep. You become quite agitated as well. So these are, you kind of become aware that things are not as easy as they were. Like you're kind of wondering, oh, what's happening? When you get that kind of feeling, that's kind of where you want to catch it and go, okay, something might not be working. Because thereafter you kind of progress into chronic stress, and then the rest of the burnout spectrum, which we can discuss later. So I suppose awareness of what burnout is, and the more we talk about it, the more we can start to destigmatize it, because people are worried to say, look, I need help, I'm not coping. I certainly did. I didn't know how to ask for help, and when help was given to me, I didn't know how to receive it either. And I'm not unique, and women in particular struggle with this. This whole, receiving help, and so that's one piece. And then there's a lot of beliefs that are attached to burnout, like I'm weak or I'm incapable, and that's not the fact, not the case at all. So we need to start to change the dialogue, so it makes it easier for people to say, look, I'm at my limit, and I can only focus on this, and I can focus on this well. So you need to find the next best person for this. So that's awareness. Another strategy is having a look at what the chronic stress is causing your burnout. So chronic stress can be like one big incident. So you can have, an accident. It can be a car accident, horse riding accident, something like that. Or it can be lots of little stresses, but over a long period of time. So you need to have a look at what that stress is, and try and resolve it. Because when we don't resolve it, that's when we start to kind of look at our survival strategies. So these are the ways that we cope. And with burnout, there are particular personalities that may be more aligned towards going down the burnout spectrum. So your people pleasers, your perfectionists, your high achievers, your overfunctioners. This is a big cohort of people, because our society demands this kind of fast-paced, way of doing things. And these are the strategies that have got us this far, but they're unsustainable. So what we need to do is identify those strategies and then get to the root of why we have selected that strategy. So the strategy isn't wrong because it's worked for us in the past. That's why we routinely go to that default strategy. But we need to understand, okay, what caused me to go to that strategy in the first place? And what's the belief underneath it? Because if we get to the belief, we can then start to heal, because we might have brought into a misunderstanding about something, or, a lot of this comes from childhood. So we might have misinterpreted something, and then it's driven our whole behavior and way of life that is not, it just needs a bit of an update.
Yeah.
So I suppose those are some things that I would have a look at. And I suppose if you want something that's more tangible that you can do immediately, it's connection, because burnout can kind of really cause you to pull away from your nearest and dearest. You really do start to shut people out. But we're a social species, so having conversations like this, being able to meet other people and freely discuss things. I'm not coping with this, or it doesn't even have to be a discussion around coping. It could just be connection in some kind of way, because we all want to be heard and understood. So feeling that sense of, okay, I got you. You're part of something. You belong. That's a big one. And everyone says, okay, take breaks, breathe. There's good reason for that. It's because burnout really does affect your brain. So if you can make like little micro shifts during the day, like 10-second breaks between your tasks, you give your brain a break so it can process what it's just done, and then you can start afresh on the next thing. So that really does count as well. I can go on and on and on, but I think that's a good start.
Yeah, I think that's great, because practical strategies, when we talk about it, because there's so many things, as you said, like take a break. Sometimes, myself, I kind of forget to take a break. And when you're working on a task, you can just sit there for hours, not realizing what's happening. And at the end of the day, you're just like so blah. You're like, oh, I can't do anything else.
That's right.
But I think these are really good strategies, because, Louise, my personal experience has been, I was working for this company where I experienced burnout in a sense where I was having dreams, like bad dreams, in terms of like, oh, I have not finished these tasks and I'm not prepared for this presentation. And then I would wake up at night being so anxious. I think one strategy that worked for me is I quit the job and I got another job. So maybe that too will work. But
That can work too.
I think it's great. And as you said, the point that you mentioned is we need to be self-aware of when this burnout is taking place, especially when you mentioned that when you're in the green zone, and recognizing the burnout early can help some, people kind of address that particular, issue just there and not getting to the end of it, right? So what do you think, how can, people like myself, or other professionals, identify these kind of early symptoms of, burnout? What are some of the subtle symptoms that you can identify early so you can, really manage your burnout and fatigue?
Yeah. So it's at the beginning stages, it's more like, you go through that honeymoon stage, like I described, when you really want to take on more and you're very proactive about certain things. It's really when you start to go, oh, okay, this feels like it's getting a bit harder. So some days feel more difficult than others. That's kind of where you want to go, okay. And it's kind of happening a lot more often. So, some days you have a really big day and you're like, okay, that was a bit much for me. I'm a bit tired. But then you pick up again, you're okay. So it's when you notice, okay, I seem to be having a lot more of these heavier days and I'm not bouncing back as quick. And it's when you have those kind of common stress symptoms. So when you are not sleeping, when you start having your funny dreams, when you start to think about things, but more with a negative tinge. So you might be a bit more passive aggressive than you are normally. You might not want to make decisions, so you avoid that kind of decision-making task. You also start to neglect some of your personal needs because your focus just shifts towards work. So, I don't need to do a lot more like personal care. I don't need to go and see my friends as much. It's when other things kind of start slipping. That's when something is not quite right, because like I say, that social interaction is key, and you also just need that time out for yourself. It's not a luxury, it really is a necessity. So yeah, having a look and really being aware of the onset of stress symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, I guess. And I think being self-aware of how you're feeling is the key, I guess, here. And of course, having
100%.
circle of, your family or your friends where you can kind of go share what's happening with you, it's gonna help as well. So I agree.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
You mentioned
yeah.
feelings 100%. But most of us are not actually in tune with our feelings. We kind of numb out. Like we come home and we binge watch Netflix, or you might, indulge in sugar or wine or something. You're not actually acknowledging what your feelings are. So if you are more in tune with yourself, you have that mind, body, spirit kind of connection. You are able to recognize your feelings. You can process the emotions rather than bottling them up. Yeah, 100%.
Right. And as I think about burnout, and the fatigue that comes through work, through your job, no matter how much you love it and you enjoy it, but there's still some sort of burnout. I feel like in the, later, during the age of our parents and where work was like, it was not like your priority, like your family, yourself, your personal care was a priority, and then came work. So you can,
Yeah.
kind of provide for the family. It was not a main thing. But as time is going by, I noticed there's some sort of flip there because people tend to be like work is everything, and I don't agree with that. I feel like you still
Mm.
need to put yourself first. If your job is not letting you do that, I think you kind of work on that, go find another job that lets you,
Mm.
because I think focusing on yourself is the key. And I have experienced this myself. I've experienced burnout myself, and I can totally relate to what
Right.
you're saying. And I agree. I totally, totally, totally agree to that.
I'd actually done this myself. Um, so I am originally from South Africa and I came to Australia and I was working at a company and they were sponsoring me on a 457 visa. And what I'd done is to create this belief that I really had to prove myself for the work that I was doing to make sure that we got the visa so that we could stay here in Australia because why not? It's amazing. So what I'd done is I'd gone, okay, I need to have this job so that we can get the visa, so that we can food over our heads, so that we can, live securely. Because while South Africa is beautiful, it does have a lot of corruption. And I myself experienced quite a bit of violence when I was there. So I created this belief that was actually, around safety. I needed to have my job and I created it around safety. So if I had this job, then I could have the visa, then I could be here and provide, shelter and food and everything for myself and my family. So that became my absolute top value. So of course I was going to kind of discount everything. And I did.
Mm.
I, frequently said no to friends and social engagement. And I didn't even know what my hobbies were and things like that because you kind of strip things away because your values are skewed. And the same thing can happen um, when you start at a company and you align with their values. So everything is fine. So your energy, you're kind of pulling in the same direction. But when, let's say, a company gets taken over by another one, their values change. So there may be a difference of values here. So there's an energy deficit. The employee will feel that. Or if the company says, okay, we subscribe to these values, but they're actually enacting and doing something completely different, the employee will feel that as well. So you need to have a look at values. Values really are a big driver in terms of your belief of how you conduct yourself and how you conduct yourself in the workplace.
Mm.
So I'm just thinking in terms, so that was my story. One of my clients, as I say, he's got things outside the family, outside the workplace, but they have manifested in the workplace, and that was more family oriented. But he has gone to absolute depletion trying to provide in a way that he thought best. So nothing wrong with his strategy, it just didn't work in this situation. So He needs a bit of an update. I'm just thinking of another one. With her, she didn't feel valued at all. She didn't feel valued. She didn't feel recognized. She didn't feel part of the team. So she was showing up and doing all these different initiatives. And yeah, she did have outside things going on, but the focus was work. So yeah, a lot of the time the focus is work.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it is how it is like, isn't it? I mean, everyone's kind of pushed to, work and make to feel like that's the priority and that's life. That's how life is. But I think that, as you kind of pointed out, we fail to like prioritize ourselves, and you cannot give from an empty cup. I love that because a lot of people tend to forget. Like if you have nothing left to give, you can't really, well, you're gonna drain
There was
from
actually
your fatigue.
100%. There is actually another saying like give from, so you picture an old kind of cup and saucer and let your cup flow over. So whatever flows into the saucer itself, that you can give to someone else, because then your cup will always be full so that you can give the best of yourself.
Yeah.
But they can have whatever is extra. And that extra, there's nothing wrong with the extra stuff. It's all good. Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's kind of been eye-opening and kind of helping, myself, because I can relate so much because I have experienced burnout, and I related to everything you just mentioned, Louise. Like, thank you so much. I think with this, we have kind of come to an end of our podcast for today. So all this all the time we had, but I hope that the audiences can connect to us and connect to you, and connect to the kind of work you're doing, and hope that they realize that they need to be the primary focus first, and then everything comes everything comes later. So I'm really grateful for having you on this channel, and I hope to see you again, perhaps with some other topics, more interesting topics as well, because I wanted to kind of dwell into more and talk to you more, but this is all the time we have for today. But
I'd love to. I could speak on this for ages. Yes.
yeah, I'm sure. I can tell that you're so passionate. And you really doing a great job in helping out people kind of realize their worth. So clap for you.
Thank you.
All right, Louise, thank you so much for joining today. And
You're welcome.
take care. I'll see you next time. Love you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. See you then.
Bye.